It began like any other evening, a quiet, routine night. The kind where you expect nothing more than the soft hum of the apartment and the occasional distant sound from outside. I, Daniel, had just finished tidying my desk after a long day at work, exhausted but satisfied, anticipating a simple conversation with my wife, Melissa. We had been married for 6 years, and for most of that time, I truly believe we shared a bond built on trust, intimacy, and mutual understanding. Yet recently, that foundation had started to show cracks. Subtle at first, like tiny fractures in glass, barely noticeable until the light hits them just right. Melissa entered from the bedroom, her face unreadable, but I could sense a storm simmering behind her eyes. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm yet carrying a sharp edge that made my stomach tighten. I looked up from the papers I was sorting, expecting the usual discussion about dinner plans or the weekend schedule. Instead, she spoke words that struck me like a hammer. "You don't deserve intimacy." For a moment, the apartment seemed to shrink. Shadows deepened. Her words echoed in my mind, mixing shock with disbelief. I had always been patient, attentive, striving to connect with her emotionally and physically. I had tried to understand her fatigue, her distance, her dismissive gestures. And yet, here she was, dismissing everything between us as if it were meaningless. I didn't react immediately. I drew a deep breath, letting the words settle. This wasn't an argument. It wasn't a fight. It was a declaration, blunt and unapologetic. And in that moment, I realized no pleading, reasoning, or coaxing could make her see the value of what we had built together. Slowly, deliberately, I moved my laptop from the desk and turned it toward her. On the screen was a folder I had been quietly compiling over the past few weeks. Screenshots, text messages, subtle interactions, evidence of things she had thought were hidden, things she assumed I hadn't noticed. I didn't speak. My silence was enough. Melissa froze, her hands suspended midair, her eyes widening, lips slightly parted, color draining from her face. She stared at the screen, at the proof she never imagined would see the light. I had long suspected, but seeing it all laid bare hit her with the same force her earlier words had struck me. Her calm composure faltered, defenses crumbling before undeniable truth. "Daniel, she stammered, but I raised my hand. There was nothing to explain, nothing to justify. The laptop spoke louder than any argument ever could. And at that moment, the balance of power in our relationship shifted. Melissa's hands trembled as she tried to look away. Yet her eyes kept returning, drawn inexorably to the evidence. I stayed silent, calm, letting the weight of months of hidden actions do its work. Every message, every secret interaction, every carefully concealed moment she thought I would never see, each told a story she could no longer deny. Her heartbeat quickened, color returning to her cheeks, not with relief but panic. "Daniel, I can explain," she whispered, her voice weak, lacking conviction. No excuse could undo what lay before her. Her usual confidence, the wave of a hand dismissal of my concerns, had vanished. She was exposed, and I could see she knew it. "What's all this?" she asked, though it was more a fragile plea than a question. I looked at her steadily, voice calm, measured. "This is what I've been noticing, Melissa. The late-night messages, the lies, the excuses. You said I don't deserve intimacy, but maybe it's you who doesn't deserve honesty." Her face went pale, lips trembling. For years, I'd endured the distance, overlooked the subtle signs, held hope she would come back. But hope without truth is fragile. And now truth stood between us like an insurmountable wall. I had given everything, and yet she had betrayed not only me but the life we promised one another. Melissa sank into the armchair, silent, clutching the sides as if trying to anchor herself. I waited, letting the weight of her own actions settle in. Every betrayal, every omission, every lie, months of it, hung between us. Finally, she looked up, tears brimming, voice cracking. "Daniel, I never thought you'd find out," she admitted, the mass of control gone. And in that moment, I realized the clarity I had sought wasn't in confrontation or accusations. It was in quiet observation and patience. She had revealed herself through her own choices. I had only let the evidence speak. Shock gave way to calm certainty. This was no longer just anger or heartbreak. It was understanding who she truly was and deciding how I would respond. No yelling, no pleading. The revelation itself was a turning point. Melissa remained slumped in the chair, eyes glossy, bravado stripped away. I closed the laptop slowly. The click of the lid sounded louder than any argument could. Silence filled the room, heavy and commanding, where truth now resided. I stepped closer, gaze unwavering, voice low but firm. "Melissa, this changes everything. I won't beg. I won't chase. I will not compromise my dignity for someone who disregards it." Shock, regret, disbelief flickered across her face. She had assumed I would react with rage or threats, but I offered something far more devastating. Clarity. She stared at me, searching for the man she thought she knew. The patient, accepting man. But he no longer existed. Daniel, the man who had silently observed, waited, and endured, was now free to act with the full weight of truth behind him. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I simply stepped back, letting the tension linger, letting her absorb the consequences of her own choices. The betrayal she had tried to hide, the dismissive cruelty she had inflicted. It was all laid bare. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. For the first time, she understood the gravity of what she had risked, the reality that I would no longer tolerate her lies. Melissa whispered, voice barely audible, I didn't mean for it to." I shook my head slowly, not with anger, but with quiet finality. "It's too late for that. You've shown me who you are. Now I see who I need to be." I moved to the bedroom, gathering the few belongings I kept by the door, a symbolic act of reclaiming the life I deserved. Melissa sat frozen, pale, realizing that the world she had assumed she controlled was no longer hers. I left the apartment deliberately, each step measured, heartbeat steady. This wasn't revenge, it was restoration. Restore myself to a life free from betrayal, free from the pretense of love that had never been returned. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. The laptop, the evidence, the truth, it had spoken louder than any argument could. Melissa had gone pale because she finally understood. Actions have consequences, and sometimes the most powerful response is quiet, unwavering resolve. I walked into the night with calm certainty, heart heavy yet stronger, leaving behind a woman who had delivered the most painful lesson of all, that respect and honesty cannot be demanded. They must be reciprocated, or they have no place in a shared life.